So I think
there you go. You got it.
there you go. Okay.
Well done.
Okay. I haven't yet muted everybody. I'm not sure how to do that. I'm getting so good at computers, but I don't know how to do that. Okay, you'll have to mute yourselves. So, okay, so this chapter of Tehilim, Perek Chaf Zayin, or 27, as you know, we add it to our davening twice a day from the beginning of Elul, and then until, depending on custom, but to around Shmini Atzeret time. Some people only till Hoshana Rabbah, some people till Shmini Atzeret, some people begin on the first day of Rosh Chodesh Elul, some people begin on the second day of Rosh Chodesh Elul, but traditionally we say it twice a day. Again, the difference in Minhagim, that some people say it in Shachrit and Mincha, and some people say it in Shachrit and Ma'ariv. So we always just imagine that this is just part of the Elul davening that once Yontif is coming, we say the David Hashem Ari, and we don't give much thought why we say it, what it means, when we started saying it, and that's what I want to explore a little bit today. So interestingly, it's a pretty new custom. It's just a few hundred years old that this started being included in our davening. And we want to have a look and see what its sources are and why it became included in our davening. So interestingly, it's not mentioned in Shulchan Aruch. It's not mentioned in the Talmud. There's hardly any mention of it in writings about davening. So, and then on the other hand, while we're saying that there's hardly any mention of it at all, on the other hand, it's a custom that is almost across the board. So traditionally, just about everybody says David Hashem Ari during this time. There are some people who don't. Okay, so before we go into the ones we do, so the Sephardic Jews never took on to say it, although now more and more Sephardic communities do add it into their davening, but generally it was not part of their davening. They say from the beginning of Elul, they start saying Slichot every morning. So it seems from that they say Slichot and not LeDavid Hashem Ori, that saying LeDavid Hashem Ori has got the same meaning and the same effect of saying Slichot, and so they don't need to say both. So we would want to explore that possibility. Followers of the Vilna Gaon, the Nusach HaGra, do not say LeDavid Hashem in their davening, and this is that because the Vilna Gaon was very strict that there were no changes made to the davening. So he said, no, you want to say extra Tehilim, you can say extra Tehilim, but it's not going to be added in as one of the parts of the davening. Also, the Vilna Gaon was very strict that he didn't do things that would inconvenience people, and so he said to add the David Hashem Ari just adds to the davening, makes it longer. I don't know, maybe people's coffee is getting cold, I'm not sure what thing, but he said no, this is we're not adding it into our davening, although the Vilna Gaon said this is very important. It's a very important thing. So he wasn't negating the greatness of the David Hashem Ari. And then there's another group of people who don't say the David Hashem Ari. This is a whole group of Hasidim. Anybody who is a descendant of anybody who is a descendant of the dynasty of Rabbi Elimelech of Lezensk, which is the Hasidim like Tzanz, Rizhana, Apta Hasidim, they don't say it either. And there's a very bizarre story that explains why they don't say it. It says that it gives credit to a man called Rabbi Eliyahu Baal Shem, that he came up with two different customs that he introduced people to do. The one was to say LeDavid Hashem, and the other one was to say on a Friday night to add in a paragraph to the davening, which begins with the words Kegavna. And these are two things that this Rabbi Eliyahu Eliyahu Baal Shem, who actually came about 200 years before the Baal Shem Tov, as you know, the famous Baal Shem Tov, and he's given credit for these two institutions, part of our davening. Now, the story goes that the poritz of the place that he was living now came to him with a threat, and he said, "My wife and I have not had children, and if we don't have a child within this year, there's sorrows for the Jews on this land. And we've heard that you, Rab Eliyahu Baal Shem, you have the power, you have the koyach to make God give children to people who need, and so now you have the job, go and do it. And if not, trouble." So he started davening and praying and giving tzedakah and invoking Hashem to please give the poritz and his wife a son before the end of the year. And time was marching by and didn't look like anything was happening. So he got really scared, and he did something. He went to what we call the Sitra Achra, the other side. He went and started using black magic and all different kinds of magical sources, but not from a holy side. And sure enough, the poritz was blessed with a child, and the poritz was very happy. The Jews were very happy, but heaven was not very happy. And says that there was absolute chaos in heaven. They said, how does such a thing happen? That a person as great as Rab Eliyahu Baal Shem goes and uses the Sitra Achra, the negative side, the impure side, and brings miracles into the world through that method. And it was decided in heaven that Rab Eliyahu Baal Shem and his would be absolutely wiped out, him and his family and all his descendants, which means that there would be none of all those groups of Chassidim that come from him. A very famous descendant of his was a man called Rab Elimelech of Lezensk. And Rab Elimelech of Lezensk was also a student of the Maggid, the Mezritcher Maggid, who came to him. He understood what was going on in heaven and higher spheres. And he came to Rab Elimelech of Lezensk and he said, this is what's going on in heaven now. And there's this kitrug against all of you and your descendants, and and all these groups of Jews and Chassidim, forever onwards. But I have a plan. Instead of wiping out Reb Eliyahu Baal Shem and his descendants, we're going to wipe out the great things that he instituted in the world. And so I want you to instruct your descendants that they may not say Kegavna on a Friday night, and they may not say LeDavid Hashem Eiri during the months of Elul and Tishrei. And so Rabbi Elimelech, he said to the Maggid, he said that these are such important things, and it's so important to say it. And he said, no, this is for the sake of saving all these people. And Rabbi Elimelech instructed his descendants not to say it. And so that's why we have till today that those groups of Hasidim do not say LeDavid Hashem Eiri. Interesting, just as an aside, that the Tzanzer Rebbe's son, Rabbi Cheskel became the Shinova Rebbe, and he reintroduced LeDavid Hashem Eiri. He said the great things that come out of it are too big, and he was not prepared to give up saying LeDavid Hashem Eiri. And why I even tell you this is because it gives us a little inkling of to how important it is to say LeDavid Hashem Eiri, to say this chapter of Tehilim twice a day. So let's see where Reb Eliyahu Baal Shem even came up with the idea that it should be said at all. So if you go and you look in the Kitzur Shulchan Aruch, which is the abridged version of the Shulchan Aruch, when it starts speaking about the customs of the month of Elul, it says that every day in Elul we blow shofar. And that this is a universal custom. Everybody blows shofar. In fact, in the Kitzur Shulchan Aruch, it even mentions it almost as a mitzvah. We blow shofar during the month of Elul. And then, strange wording, the Kitzur Shulchan Aruch says, Oid Noihagim, there's another custom. And what is that custom? To say chapter 27 of Tehilim, and he gives a funny reason why. He says, because in chapter 27, there is 3 words that allude to the time that we're in. When it says, LeDavid Hashem Eiri, Hashem is my light, it's talking about Rosh Hashanah. When it says V'yishi, and he's my salvation, it's talking about Yom Kippur. And then later on in the same chapter, it says, Ki yitzpeneni b'sukkah, he keeps me in his sukkah. So this is talking about this is talking about sukkahs, obviously. And so that's why we say it. And the Kitzur Shulchan Aruch says that this is based on a medrash, and the whole thing doesn't make so much sense, because what? This is the only perek in Tehilim that mentions other yontifs, or why aren't we saying all of them? And what does it actually mean that it's so we want to try and understand those things in order to understand it. Also, the Kitzur Shulchan Aruch says that it comes from a medrash, and there isn't officially a medrash that it comes from. So all these things together, we want to understand, why are we saying the David Hashem Ori during this month. So the first time that the custom to say it is actually written in print is in a not well-known book called Shem Tov Katan. A small Shem Tov, whatever that means, is written right at the beginning of the 18th century, and it is a book of collections of teachings from the Arizal. Which, interestingly, if you ask someone simply, why do we say this chapter this month, they'll say it's teachings of the Arizal, and this is why. Okay? Teachings of the Arizal. And this is a loose translation of what he says in the book about it. He says, I want to share with you a big secret. Everyone who says this chapter 27, from the first day of Elul until Simchas Torah, can remove from them any kitrug that is on themselves. A kitrug is like a bad decree. It can nullify all harsh decrees. He can be freed from any judgment. And so we must be careful to say this chapter of Tehilim 2 times every day in this time. And that's all, doesn't give any reasons, nothing else. Some years later, about 20 years later, a student of Reb Chaim Vital. Now, Reb Chaim Vital is a student of the Arizal, and he was the one. Arizal never wrote any of his teachings down, but his student, Reb Chaim Vital, wrote down a lot of whatever we have of the Arizal. But a student of Reb Chaim Vital, so in other words, a grand student of the Arizal, a man called Reb Chaim Cohen. He said he learned to say the David Hashem Ori by instruction of the Arizal. Still not telling us any reason why it was added to our davening or anything. Then in the middle of the 18th century, there was a sefer called Chemdat Yamim. It was written in Turkey, in a place called Izmir. Now, anyone who knows history probably knows that Izmir was the seat of Shabtai Tzvi, the false Mashiach. And lots of the people who lived there belonged to the sect belonging to Shabtai Tzvi. And so everybody treated any Torah that came from Izmir, they treated it with a lot of cynicism, like worrying if it was really kosher or if it came from Shabtai Tzvi, like not sure if we were allowed to use it or not. And it took a while until this book, this sefer Chemdat Yamim, was accepted as kosher and having nothing to do with Shabtai Tzvi. But he wrote in this book, Chemdat Yamim, he said, I've made it my custom to add chapter 27 and also chapter 33 to my davening during this time. And he explained, he said the reason why is because in both of these chapters, that's 27 and 33, Hashem's name, the Yud and the Hey and the Vav and the Hey, the name that we don't actually say as it's written, is written in both of those chapters 13 times. And this hints to the 13 attributes of mercy that we know about, and that's what we want to try and unleash during this month of Elul, and therefore it's a good thing to add. So now we're getting closer to a reason of why we're actually saying it. And then the next mention of saying David Hashem Ori comes in another book, another sefer written in 1794. There was a man called Reb Shabtai Yerashkova, and he writes in his siddur. He actually put together a siddur, and in his siddur he writes that it's very important to say this chapter during your Elul and Yontif davening. And he says he makes this like promise that anyone who says it will live well this year. So this is like a little bit of a background. At that same time, the Chida and some other rabbis all gave their suggestion that we included in our davening. And so this is a little bit of a background of why we why are we including it. But we obviously want to, by learning the chapter itself, we want to understand better what it's about and why it is so important, why it has this good press that we to say it. So the very simplest level, as I mentioned right at the beginning, which comes from the Medrash, which tells us that there are various words in this chapter that remind us of the time that we're in. So the first one that says in Medrash Tehilim, it says, if you have a look at the chapter of Tehilim, if you do happen to have it in front of you, where it says, "LeDavid Hashem Eiri," Hashem is my light. This is a hint to Rosh Hashanah. Why is it a hint to Rosh Hashanah? It says that we want Hashem's judgment to be light, to illuminate us. It should be happy, right? Because you know that in Torah, dark always represents negative things and light represents positive things. And so if we're standing on Rosh Hashanah in judgment, we want the judgment to be light, something positive, something good, something happy. He then continues and he says, V'yish'i is hinting at the time of Yom Kippur. Why is it hinting to Yom Kippur? He explains that Hashem should save us, that even if we don't deserve good and great and happy things, but the Yishi, he should be our salvation. He should save us. He should forgive us. And then continues the Medrash Tehilim. It speaks about, like it says in the 5th verse over here, Ki yitzpaneni b'sukkah, that he hides me in his sukkah, is hinting to sukkahs, which is quite an obvious link. He also comments on the word lulei, emanti, if only, which we'll come to that also, where if only, and the letters are the same letters as the word Elul. So all of those reasons are brought in the Medrash Tehilim, but that's a very surface reason of why we say this chapter during this time. We want to look at a little bit of a deeper reason, a deeper understanding of why this is such an important kapitel to say. And not necessarily the many other kapitlach of Tehilim, which also allude to Yontif, also allude to blowing the shofar, also allude to the time that we're in, or even another kapitel to them that also has the name of Hashem written 13 times. And the simple answer that actually the Rebbe gives is, he says, this chapter of Tehilim reflects, that's the whole chapter of Tehilim, that reflects exactly what the month and the time that we're in is all about. And if you can understand this chapter of Tehilim, if you can understand that, you can understand the time that we are in at the moment. So what is that? Okay, what is that time? And obviously we're not going to go through all of it today, but just some of it, a little bit of it. So the first idea that we are going to explore a little bit is this idea of the name of Hashem being used 13 times, or the special name of Hashem being used 13 times, and this connecting to the 13 midot harachamim, the 13 attributes of mercy. So this is the name of Hashem, the Yud and the Hey and the Vav and the Hey, name of Hashem, and this is the name that is the name of mercy, right? So you know that different names of Hashem represent different, if we could call it, moods of Hashem. And when we're looking for Hashem being in a merciful mood, the name of Hashem, Yud, Hey, and Vav and Hey, that name of Hashem is the ultimate, absolute ultimate mercy. And you recognize it from what we call the Yud Gimel Midat HaRachamim, the 13 attributes of mercy. And that's a sentence that you probably all recognize from Shul, where we open the Aron Kodesh and we say Hashem, Hashem, Kel Rachum, V'Chanun, right? Those are the 13 attributes of mercy. And this is the time traditionally that Hashem forgave the Jewish people. Moshe is up in heaven and he's pleading, and Hashem has mercy. We'll elaborate on this a little bit more. And eventually Hashem says, okay, I know you sinned and I forgive you, right? And that's actually Yom Kippur, where Hashem says, V'salachti kidvarecha, I will forgive you just like you, Moshe, have asked. So when we say this chapter of Tehilim, one level of what we're actually saying is, Hashem, I know I didn't have a perfect year. I know possibly I messed up somewhere during the year. Maybe I didn't do everything exactly the way I should, but I'm asking you to have mercy, have some rachamim, have some mercy on us. And that's what we're hoping for, that Hashem should be merciful on us during this time. So let's look at the capital itself and see some of these things inside. Okay, so firstly, the very first pasuk begins the words LeDavid, to David, Hashem Eiri v'yishi, Hashem is my light and my salvation, Mimi ira, from whom should I fear? Hashem ma'oz chayai, Hashem is my strength, my stronghold, Mimi efchad, and so who should I fear? That is the first pasuk. So just to comment on the opening word, LeDavid. So we said last week that different chapters of Tehilim have different opening words, right? So we have like Mizmor LeDavid, Lam Natseach, and each of those, like that opening word, gives us a whole lot of information about the coming chapter. When it just says LeDavid, it means that David himself composed this capital of Tehilim. So also, as we mentioned last week, that David was actually the compiler of the book of Tehilim, or he was the editor of the book of Tehilim, and he didn't write every single chapter of Tehilim himself. But if it begins with the words LeDavid, by David, then David himself wrote this. Nobody else was involved in this. This was David himself, comes from, and when it says LeDavid, it comes from inside of him, comes from in his heart, and it comes with his full, like his giving of himself absolutely and completely. The commentaries point out that when we look at the whole chapter, we'll see that this whole chapter is talking about the cycle of David's life and then probably all of our lives. There are times where we feel brave, right? If, I believe in Hashem, he's going to take care of me. There are times where we feel petrified, which we'll see later on in the middle of this chapter. And then hopefully we come back after we're scared and we come back and we say, Kava El Hashem, which is how it finishes. I'm back again, Hashem. I'm confident, I'm with you. I know that you're going to take care of me. But we do go through that cycle of strength, being vulnerable, and strength again. So that's how it begins, LeDavid. This comes from David, it comes from his soul, and he's telling us how he feels. And he begins off by saying, Hashem Eiri v'yishi. Hashem is my light and my salvation. And if you take notice in this very first sentence, this very first pasuk of this chapter, Hashem's name, the Yud and the Hey and the Vav and the Hey name, is there twice. Okay, first David Hashem Eiri v'yishi, and then a little bit later on it says Hashem ma'oz chayai, right, using the name of Hashem twice, which is exactly the same as when we begin singing the 13 Midat HaRachamim. If you think about how they sing it in Shul, we begin with Hashem, Hashem, right? Hashem, Hashem, Kel Rachum V'Chanun, right? The double use of the name of Hashem, the Yud and the Hey and the Vav and the Hey. So we're seeing already the similarity of this capital, this chapter of Tehilim, to that sentence which is sung out in Shul. So the Medrash tells us that when Moshe was up in heaven the first time, getting the Torah ready to bring it down to the people, Hashem told him the secret. Hashem said to him, if you ever need mercy, then say this pasuk, right? Use this pasuk. If ever the Yidden need rachamim, they need mercy, this is the pasuk that you should say. Hashem, Hashem, kel rachum v'chanan. And Moshe Rabbeinu says like, what, Hashem? Why would the Jews ever need mercy? Okay, now think about this. At this stage, they were at the highest level. They've just camped at the bottom of Har Sinai. They were, it says, at the level of the Adam Harishon before he sinned. They're at this extremely, extremely high level. And Hashem is saying, Moshe, if they ever need mercy from me, here's the trick. And Moshe says, what, God? Like, why on earth would they need mercy from me? To which Hashem answers him in the words of the Medrash, Chayecha, I promise you that there will be a time where the Jews will need mercy. And this is the trick. Say these words. Anyway, says Moshe Rabbeinu, whatever he did, shrugged or whatever he did. And he learnt the sentence. Not 40 days later, he comes down, and what does he find these great Jews doing? But dancing around the Egel Hazav. Okay, they're dancing around the golden calf. And he's shocked, okay? But now Hashem says, okay, I'm gonna wipe out these people, right? I don't need them anymore. They, in such a short time, they're already dancing around the golden calf. Let me wipe them out and make a new nation. And what does Moshe Rabbeinu do? He says, you gotta forgive them. Please, Hashem, forgive them. And Hashem says, no chance, not forgiving these people. And so what does Moshe Rabbeinu remember? Hashem, Hashem, kel rachum v'chanan, right? He says, now I remember Hashem told me what to do if I need mercy, and here I need mercy, and it works. So that by the end of that time that Moshe is up, that time, the next time Hashem forgives the Jewish people, he says, "V'salachti kidvarecha," I forgive you. So that's our first introduction to Hashem, Hashem, kel rachum v'chanan. If you look at that pasuk in the Torah, Hashem, Hashem, kel rachum v'chanan, and you go and study over there, and Rashi asks, why the double Hashem? Why does it say Hashem, Hashem, kel rachum v'chanan? Would have been enough just to say Hashem, kel rachum v'chanan. What is the double use of the words Hashem, Hashem, kel rachum v'chanan? And Rashi answers very simply. He says the first word, Hashem, is talking about before they sin. And the second Hashem is talking about after they sin. Okay, strange Rashi, doesn't elaborate on it. The double use of the words Hashem for before they sin, and Hashem before they sin. When we all good and great and we haven't sinned yet, then Hashem. And when we have sinned, then Hashem. Okay, so have a look in the first pasuk again. The first Hashem comes before the words Hashem Oiri v'yishi. Hashem is my light and my salvation. That's when I'm all good. Everything is great. Hashem is my light and my salvation. And then if I've sinned, or things are not going the way I want them, or life is difficult, then that's when I need the second Hashem, Hashem ma'oz chayai. Hashem is my stronghold. Hashem is my fortress. Hashem holds me up. Going back to this concept of before they sin and after they sin. So the commentaries ask, what makes a person sin? What is it that causes us to sin? And there are two simple answers to that. The one answer, we try and convince ourselves that it's not a sin. Okay, what I'm about to do is not a sin. I'm going to say this because someone needs to know this information. I'm going to do this because it has to be done. Really, Hashem doesn't, this isn't really exactly what the Torah was saying, right? This is not really a sin. And that's why I can do it. That's one reason that we sin. And another reason that we sin is because the temptation was so big and we just wanted to. I needed to say that. I needed to eat that. I was just so overcome with the desire to do it, and I did it. That's the second reason that we sin. So how do I battle that? Okay, how do I manage that? So here in this pasuk, it gives us a hint. It says, Hashem Oiri v'yishi. Hashem is my light and my salvation. What does that mean? When I'm really being honest with myself and I'm looking at something which I know may be right and may not be right, and I ask myself the question, and I really want to do it. So I try to convince myself that it's not a sin, okay? It's not really a sin. There's purpose in what I'm about to do. Then Hashem Oiri V'yishi. Hashem sheds the light. Hashem says to us, he lets us know that it's not really right. And if we're all honest with ourselves, we know that to be true. In other words, we sometimes try to convince ourselves that what I'm doing is right. We sometimes try to convince ourselves that it's not really a sin. But if we stop and we think, Hashem provides us with enough light, with enough understanding, that if we want, we can really come to our own conclusion and know that what we're about to do is not right. That is Hashem Oiri. Hashem is my light. He lets me know what's right and wrong. And another help in my battle is when I'm so tempted by something and I just want to do it, right? That was the second reason that we sin. We know that something is wrong, but we just overcome with desire to do it anyway. Then the Yishi. Hashem is our salvation. He actually gives us the strength and the koyach that if we want to tap into that strength and koyach, we wouldn't sin, we wouldn't do it. So that's, as we said, Hashem before the sin, okay? The first Hashem, the Hashem that's there for us before we sin. When we want to sin, and he helps us not to. He helps us stay on the right track. But what do I do about after I sin? Because I'm a regular human being, I'm made of body, and I have desires, I have needs, I have temptations that I give into more and everything. I have a Yetzer Hara, and I live in a regular world. And with all these beautiful things, there will be times that I will, succumb. I will land up sinning. That's when the second Hashem comes into place. Hashem gives us the strength, Hashem Ma'oz Chayai, he gives us the strength to say sorry and to do teshuvah and to be reaccepted. This is Hashem Ma'oz Chayai. It's such an interesting concept, teshuvah, that we do wrong and then we say sorry and Hashem accepts us back as new and fresh and everything, even though Hashem knows that most likely I will do wrong again, and he's still, but who gives us the ability to realize that we did wrong and to do teshuvah? You know, I think the word sorry is one of the most difficult words that we have in our dictionaries. We always laugh because when my daughter Batsheva was like 6 months old, I think by mistake, but she broke my glasses. She actually like put her hands out and she was speaking. She was probably about a year and she broke my glasses in half. And obviously I was like very annoyed. Okay. And she said to me, mistake. It was a mistake. I said, yes, but it's a mistake, but you need to say sorry. And she looked at me and she said, no, sorry, mommy. Okay. No, sorry. Okay. And we laugh about it till today because that is instinct. We don't want to say sorry. We don't, it's one of the hardest words to say is sorry. And Hashem gives us the strength to say sorry. And that's what it means when it says over here, Hashem Ma'oz Chayai. Hashem is my stronghold, okay? He helps me to do teshuvah. And that's my big first Elul lesson. The very first Elul lesson that we're taking from the David Hashem Oiri is that obviously it's best if I can keep with the Hashem part, the part of not sinning and using Hashem as a help not to sin ever. But if I do sin, and I know as I'm coming and wrapping up the year, that there probably are a few times here or there where maybe I have sinned, where I've done something that's not right, Hashem ma'oz chayai. Hashem will give me the strength. He will allow me to do teshuvah, and he will accept me just as he did for Moshe Rabbeinu, when Moshe Rabbeinu went and davened on behalf of the Jewish people. And that's what was happening exactly in this time. And so that's the very first reason that, or probably the very first and main reason why the David Hashem is included in our davening of this time, why it's so important for us, and together with the promises of the segulas, that if a person says this with the right concentration twice a day during this time, he will remove all negative things from him. So let's take that one little step further, is that it's not just the act of saying it, but if a person were to say this kapitel of Tehilim twice a day and just stop and think for a few minutes about what they're saying, and they think to themselves, I'm saying Hashem, Hashem, right? And I'm getting the strength to not to sin, and I'm getting the strength to do teshuvah, then obviously this is going to remove anything negative from us, and it's going to give us a good year. So that's our first lesson. And actually, although I was planning to go on to the next one, I'm not. Okay, it's a bit long to add in over here, so I'm actually going to end here. Don't know if anybody has any comments. You can unmute, and I will try and answer. If you are.
Rivky?
Yeah.
You said the spelling of Hashem here is for mercy, but when we say Hashem, Hashem, in
Yeah.
the 13 attributes, it's spelled with a yud.
No, the yud is also just an abbreviation of this name of Hashem, because we don't say this name out. So if you take notice, when you see yud being spelled out like that, we don't say it either, but it also has the shiva and the kamatz underneath, making the same sound as this, the yud kei vav kei name of Hashem.
And that Gagavna, is that Aramaic? It's not Hebrew, is it?
It's not Hebrew. Probably it's Aramaic. Yeah, I think the governor. A lot of our tefillahs are in Aramaic. Especially ones that we want a Kabbalistic something of, because apparently, and I don't understand exactly what I'm saying, but apparently the angels don't understand Aramaic. So.
Okay. Interesting. Thank you so much. It was beautiful.
Pleasure.
Yeah.
Thank you, Rivky. It was wonderful.
Good.
Have a good Shabbos, everybody.
Have a good Shabbos, and refuah shlema to your husband.
Thanks, Rivky. I'll pass on the message. Much appreciated. Bye.
Thanks.
Rivky, I think Sadie asked if you were recording, and I see you are. Can you put the recording on that group?
I will try.
Okay. Okay. God bless.
And you.
Shaya.
Thank you.
Shabbos. Bye.
Shabbos.
Shabbos.
Good Shabbos. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Rivky. Take
Thank
care.
you. Thank you.
And a good Shabbos.
And
Thank
you.
you, Rivky.
And you.
Thanks, Rivky. Have a good Shabbos.
Thank you. Thanks you. Bye-bye.
Okay. God bless. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Thank you. Shabbat shalom.
Shabbat shalom, everybody.
Thank you.
No, Salome, it's so nice to have you here. You are muted, but so exciting to see your name.
Muted and blind.
I see. But we're so happy to have you here.
Yeah, wonderful.
So, okay, everyone, I'm going to turn off. I'll see you.
Okay, thank you.
Next week. Good Shabbos. Bye-bye.
Good Shabbos. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Okay, bye-bye.